33%. That is, well, it's a staggeringly high number. That is the percentage of people who start a personal budget, they track their expenses, and then they completely abandon the entire endeavor within 3 months.
Yeah, within 3 months. It's wild.
Right. And the traditional financial advice industry, they look at that massive failure rate, they point a finger at the consumer, and they basically say, well, there it is. People just lack discipline.
Which is, I mean, it's the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for financial gurus.
Totally.
Framing a systemic failure as this, like, personal character flaw is a very comforting narrative for them. It puts all the blame on your lack of willpower rather than, actually questioning whether the tool you're using is fit for the job in the first place.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for just a second because, we all know that one person who absolutely loves their spreadsheets, right?
Oh, yeah. The spreadsheet wizards.
Exactly. The person who, tracks every single receipt, color codes their categories, and they seem to build wealth just fine. So, doesn't budgeting work for them?
Well, even for the spreadsheet enthusiasts, it's actually the wrong tool for the job.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they're the 7% exception, sure, but they are burning an immense amount of unnecessary cognitive fuel to maintain that system. So the contrarian thesis we're really unpacking today in this deep dive is that if you are actively budgeting and tracking every single penny, you have already lost.
Wow. Okay, that's a bold claim.
It is, but look, the wealthy do not budget. They automate. The underlying math of personal finance, spending less than you earn, that's exactly the same for everyone. But by automating the architecture of your money, the willpower load just drops to zero.
So today, we are combining some heavy-hitting behavioral economics from Nobel winners like Richard Thaler and Daniel Kahneman, and we're pairing that science with practical frameworks from habit experts like James Clear and financial authors, Ramit Sethi, David Bach, Morgan Housel.
It's a really diverse stack of sources.
It really is. And the mission today is to completely rewire how you think about managing your money. Because if you have ever abandoned a budget, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You do not have a discipline problem. You have a design problem.
Right. And to really understand why relying on willpower is this biological trap, we basically have to look at the mechanics of human habit formation.
Okay, let's get into the biology.
So every habit you have, whether it's tying your shoes or buying a coffee, it follows a specific neurological loop. Cue, routine, reward.
Cue, routine, reward. Got it.
Right. And when you try to start a new financial behavior, like meticulously logging every purchase into an app before you actually buy something, it requires intense conscious effort.
Because it's not a habit yet. Right.
Correct. And that cognitive heavy lifting, it all happens in the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which handles complex decision-making. But the thing is, it's an absolute energy hog. To keep using it requires immense biological resources.
That makes so much sense. It feels like relying on your financial willpower is basically like dealing with a terrible smartphone battery.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. Like you wake up in the morning and the battery is at 100%. You are just full of good intentions. But then you walk past a bakery on your way to work. You smell the croissants, you force yourself to resist, and boom, your willpower battery drops to 95%.
Yep, and it doesn't stop there.
No. Then, at lunch, your coworkers invite you to some expensive restaurant. You politely decline, you eat your sad desk salad, and you drop to 80%.
And the drain just continues all day long.
Exactly. By 8 o'clock at night, your willpower battery is blinking red at 1%. You are completely cognitively exhausted, and you end up ordering $60 worth of expensive takeout on a delivery app simply because you just do not have the mental energy left to chop a vegetable.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
And the scientific term for that exhausted state is ego depletion or self-control fatigue.
Ego depletion, I like that.
And the anchoring research actually gives us a very precise cybernetic model for exactly how that battery drains so quickly. It's called the TOTE loop.
2T.
Like a tote bag.
Yeah, spelled T-O-T-E. It stands for test, operate, test, exit.
Okay, I think I need a concrete example of this. Walk me through what a TOTE loop looks like in real life.
Sure. So imagine you're at a restaurant and you're trying to stick to a strict monthly dining budget of $50. You look at the menu, you see a steak for $30. Your brain immediately enters the TOTE loop.
Okay, so step one is test.
Right. First, you test the price against your internal budget constraint. You realize $30 takes up more than half your monthly allowance. It fails the test.
So the mental alarm bells go off.
Exactly, which forces you to operate. Operating just means mentally adjusting and calculating alternatives. So you scan the menu for a cheaper item, you find a chicken dish for $18, then you have to test again.
Does $18 leave enough for me to go out with my friends next weekend?
Exactly. You have to run the whole mental simulation again. And if it doesn't, you have to operate again. You're just spinning your wheels.
You are. And you only exit the loop when the cognitive math finally satisfies your self-imposed rules. Running that TOTI loop demands incredibly high cognitive effort. Doing it dozens of times a day for every small purchase. I mean, it's mentally devastating.
So my brain is basically a leaky battery, and the daily mental math required by a traditional budget is just biologically unsustainable. So, I mean, are you telling me I should just give up on trying to control my financial behavior?
Not give up, no. But instead of trying to change the person, you change the environment. James Clear refers to this as choice architecture.
Choice architecture. Okay, how does that work?
Well, there's a foundational study in our sources from physician Ann Thorndike at a hospital cafeteria in Boston. She wanted to improve the eating habits of thousands of staff and visitors. But she didn't want to rely on their willpower, and she didn't want to nag them.
Right, so no eat your vegetables posters, no calorie counts screaming at people.
None of that. She simply altered the physical choice architecture. So originally, the refrigerators located right next to the cash registers, they only contained soda. If you wanted water, you had to walk further away to find it.
Which requires more effort.
Right. So Thorndike simply added bottled water to the refrigerators next to the registers. And she placed a few baskets of water bottles throughout the cafeteria food stations.
Just making the water more visible, basically.
But yeah, visual salience and proximity. And without a single word spoken to the customers, over 3 months, soda sales dropped by 11.4%, and bottled water sales surged by 25.8%.
Wow, just from moving the bottles.
Just from moving them. The underlying psychological mechanism here is that humans are biologically wired to choose the path of least resistance. When the friction to grab a water was reduced to 0, people naturally chose it.
That is wild. The environment shaped the behavior entirely. People didn't suddenly grow more disciplined overnight. The better choice was just made the most obvious and frictionless one.
Precise.
But if we pull this back to our money, if our environment dictates our behavior so heavily, I mean, we're in serious trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Because the modern commercial environment is deliberately architected to bypass all of our biological defenses.
It really is. I mean, David Bach talks about this in the sources as the automatic economy. The world we live in is completely rigged to deplete our willpower battery.
Yeah. Companies have figured out that requiring a conscious choice, a TOTI loop, every time a customer buys something, well, that creates friction.
So they eliminate the choice.
Exactly. They move to subscriptions. They use one-click buying on your phone. Your smartphone is effectively a money magnet in your pocket. It uses targeted algorithms and frictionless payments to silently drain your wealth.
And it feels like nothing, right? It just happens.
They achieve this silent drain by exploiting a behavioral economics concept known as the pain of paying. This was extensively studied by researchers Drazen Prelek and George Lowenstein.
The pain of paying.
Right. When you hand over a crisp $20 bill to a cashier, you physically watch your wallet get thinner. Your brain registers that transaction as a literal loss, which triggers an actual biological pain response. It hurts to hand over cash.
But when I double-click the side button on my phone to use Apple Pay, I don't feel a thing.
Credit cards, mobile wallets, auto billing, they all anesthetize the pain of paying. Because the money doesn't leave your account visibly or immediately, the friction is gone. The psychological brake pedal has basically been removed from the car.
Okay, wait. If plastic and digital payments anesthetize the pain of paying, shouldn't we just go back to the old school advice, like taking out our entire paycheck in physical cash, putting it into labeled paper envelopes, and forcing ourselves to feel that biological pain every time we buy groceries?
Well, using cash envelopes definitely adds friction, but it actually resurrects the exact problem we just solved.
Oh, because of the tracking.
Exactly. It requires massive amounts of manual tracking and constant TOTI loop processing. It's an incredibly willpower-heavy system, which leads right back to that 93% failure rate.
Okay, fair point. So what's the alternative one?
A much more sustainable modern defense isn't adding friction, it's creating visibility without the daily math. Financial educator Tiffany Elish proposes a system that categorizes your expenses into just 3 high-level buckets: bills, utilities, and choices.
Okay, let me make sure I understand these buckets. So bills would be the flat, non-negotiable things, right? Rent, mortgage, car payment.
Yep. things that do not change month to month. Utilities represent necessary expenses that have some variability. Groceries, heating, electricity. You need them to survive, but the exact amount fluctuates.
And then choices is just everything else. The takeout, the clothes, the random subscriptions. The beauty of just splitting your outgoing money into those three macro buckets is the instant clarity it gives you. If you look at your bank statement and almost all your income is swallowed up by the bills and utilities buckets, you do not have a discipline problem. You have an income problem. You simply don't make enough to cover baseline survival.
That's a crucial realization.
Mm-hmm.
But if a huge percentage of your income is bleeding out through the choices bucket, those frictionless one-click buys, then you have a mindless consumption problem fueled by the automatic economy.
And the worst part about traditional budgeting is what we call the budget guilt loop, right? You force yourself to track those one-click buys. You see how much you spent on the choices bucket. You feel terrible about yourself. The stress of that guilt drains your ego depletion battery, and because your battery is empty, your resistance is low.
Right.
So how do you cope with the stress? You spend more money.
It's a vicious cycle. So instead of fighting our irrational money habits with these exhausting tracking systems, we have to flip the script entirely. We can actually weaponize our brain's psychological quirks to trick ourselves into building wealth.
Yes. Let's get into the Nobel Prize winning stuff. I really want to talk about Richard Thaler and the concept of mental accounting.
Okay, so to understand mental accounting, we first need to look at strict rational economics. In classical economics, there's this fundamental rule called fungibility.
Fungibility, it's a fun word to say.
It really is.
Yeah.
Fungibility simply means that every single unit of a currency is identical and interchangeable. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar. It doesn't matter where you earned it, how you found it, or what you plan to spend it on. It all has the exact same purchasing power.
But humans do not behave rationally.
Not at all. We constantly violate fungibility. Our brains subjectively value money differently depending on its origin and its intended use. We create these imaginary mental buckets or accounts for our funds. The page 1 economic source highlights a classic, very relatable example of this. People treat a $20 bill they earned through hard labor very differently than a $20 bill they found on the sidewalk or, received in a birthday card.
Even though both 20s buy the exact same amount of groceries.
Exactly. The earned money feels harder to spend. We protect it. But the gift money, we mentally categorize it as free money and easily blow it on something frivolous.
Oh, totally.
Another perfect example is tax refunds. Logically, a tax refund is just an overpayment of your own hard-earned income being returned to you without interest.
But mentally, nobody treats it like regular income. People categorize a tax refund as a windfall, like winning a mini lottery. So instead of using that $2,000 to pay down a high-interest credit card, they go and splurge on a new television.
Exactly.
Treating a tax refund as fun money when you have credit card debt is like believing water from the kitchen sink is somehow wetter than water from the bathroom sink. It makes absolutely no mathematical sense.
It's completely irrational, but it's deeply human. Thaler actually shares some incredible anecdotes about the lengths we go to maintain these mental buckets. He talks about this finance professor, someone who intimately understands fungibility, right? Who deliberately created a mental account for charitable donations at the start of the year.
Okay.
If this professor gets an unfair speeding ticket, he doesn't get angry. He simply deducts the cost of the ticket from his charity mental account. He mentally relabels the financial loss as an insurance policy against small annoyances.
That is a hilarious coping mechanism. I kind of love that.
It works. Thaler also explores how mental accounting explains the sunk cost fallacy. Imagine you paid $100 for a ticket to a basketball game a month in advance. The day of the game arrives, and a massive, dangerous blizzard hits the city.
Oh, the roads are terrible. You shouldn't go.
Right.
Yeah.
The $100 is already gone. It's a sunk cost. You cannot get it back whether you go to the game or not. A perfectly rational economic actor would look at the dangerous roads and stay home.
Because it's not worth the risk.
But because we have a mental account open specifically for basketball game, closing that account without actually attending the game registers in the brain as a painful physical loss, people will literally risk their lives driving through a blizzard just to, quote-unquote, get their money's worth.
Wow. So we naturally create these completely irrational mental buckets to justify our behavior because closing them just hurts too much. So if our brains are hardwired to do this, can we hack this tendency? Can we use mental accounting for good?
Yes. That is exactly where Ramit Sethi's conscious spending plan comes into play.
Okay.
Since our brains desperately want to categorize money anyway, we shouldn't fight the urge. We should lean into it intentionally, up front, using 4 heavily structured buckets. Sethi suggests mapping your income into these specific categories.
Where were they?
50 to 60% goes to fixed costs, 5 to 10% to savings, 5 to 10% to investments, and crucially, 20 to 35% to guilt-free spending.
Guilt-free spending. I really want to highlight that because the budget guilt loop we talked about earlier, it entirely relies on shame. But by defining these buckets in advance, you turn the bug of mental accounting into a massive psychological feature. The money in that 20 to 35% bucket is literally engineered to be blown on whatever brings you joy.
Zero apologies necessary. You've satisfied your brain's need to categorize the money, but you've done it strategically, ensuring all the essentials are covered first.
Okay, so I map out these 4 buckets on a piece of paper, but how do I actually enforce this in reality without running face first into that willpower wall again? Like, how do we transition from knowing the buckets to actually building the architecture?
This is the execution of the contrarian thesis. Once you've defined your buckets, the next and final step is removing yourself from the equation entirely.
Removing yourself.
Yes, the routing of your money must become completely divorced from your willpower battery. David Bach calls this the pay-yourself-first philosophy, and Sethi refers to it as the finance assembly line.
Okay, walk me through mapping out that assembly line. What does the routing actually look like?
So your primary checking account is no longer a pool of money that you spend from.
Right.
It undergoes a functional shift to become a mere inbox.
An inbox.
Your paycheck hits that inbox. Then the banking infrastructure takes over. Before you even wake up on payday, before you look at your balance, before you are tempted by some targeted social media ad, automatic transfers trigger. They route the exact percentages you decided on directly into your savings and investment accounts.
Money you never see is money you never miss.
Exactly.
You are entirely outsourcing your financial discipline to the bank's routing software.
Subtraction beats dragging every single time.
Now, I have to push back here because you mentioned David Bach, and he is famous for his trademarked latte factor.
Ah, yes, the latte factor.
Right. Every financial guru on the internet loves to shame people over their coffee habits, claiming that, skipping a $5 latte and avocado toast will magically make you a millionaire through compound interest. But wait a minute, doesn't that directly contradict everything we just established?
How so?
Well, constantly forcing yourself to skip a small daily joy like a latte requires a toti loop. It exhausts the ego depletion muscle. Shouldn't we just ignore the lattes and focus on automating the big rocks, like, securing a cheaper mortgage or negotiating a car price?
It's a really critical distinction to make because the pop culture interpretation of the latte factor has become incredibly toxic.
Yes.
You're completely right. Focusing solely on depriving yourself of small joys every single day is a guaranteed recipe for burnout.
Totally.
You should not sweat the small stuff, provided your larger system is automated and your big fixed costs are reasonable. But if we look at Bach's actual source material, he uses the latte factor, or what he calls the 100-day savings challenge, of finding just a few dollars a day, not as a lifelong ascetic diet of deprivation.
Okay, then how does he use it?
He uses it as a temporary psychological tool.
Like a proof of concept for skeptics.
Exactly. For someone who is paralyzed, who believes they have absolutely no margin in their income to invest at all, tracking their spending for just a few days to locate that $5, and then watching it grow, it proves to them that wealth building is mathematically possible.
Oh, I see.
Once that belief is established, they do not rely on willpower to skip the coffee every day forever. They set up an automatic transfer for that small amount. The system takes over the heavy lifting, and the willpower load drops back to zero.
Okay, so the proof of concept gets you to trust the math, and then you just automate it immediately. So let's say we've done it. We've built the automated machine. The assembly line is humming in the background. The money is flowing into savings and investments while we sleep. But what is the end goal here?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because if the goalpost just keeps moving, if you are constantly chasing a higher net worth, this beautiful automated system is just going to produce anxiety no matter how rich you get.
This brings us to the psychology of wealth, drawing heavily on Morgan Housel's insights regarding expectations. The dangerous trap of the modern economy is the constant comparison to others. And this is severely compounded by what Daniel Kahneman identifies as the planning fallacy and optimism bias.
Let's break those down because they are sneaky.
They really are. The planning fallacy is the human tendency to underestimate the time, cost, and risks of future actions. In personal finance, it's the trap of looking at a blown budget and saying, well, the car broke down this month and we had to buy a wedding gift. It was an exception. Next month will be normal and I'll save more then.
I do that constantly, and normal never actually arrives. There's always a new exception.
Always. And the optimism bias makes us wrongly believe that acquiring just a little more wealth is the silver bullet that will magically fix all the lingering stress in our lives.
Which it doesn't.
No. The sources share a very telling anecdote about the actor Will Smith to illustrate this. He openly discussed how, early in his career, he genuinely believed that becoming famous and acquiring massive generational wealth would cure his internal depression.
Wow.
Yeah. He achieved all of it. The money, the unimaginable fame, the status only to find that his psychological voids remained completely intact.
So we are setting up all this choice architecture, hacking our mental accounting, building a seamless finance assembly line, and you are telling me that getting rich won't actually make me happy.
Well, money is an absolutely phenomenal tool for solving practical problems. It pays the mortgage, it buys nutritious food, it covers devastating medical bills without causing bankruptcy. But it is a terrible tool for solving psychological problems.
Yeah.
If you have a deep internal void or a profound lack of purpose, a fully funded retirement account will not fill it.
That is profound. So the ultimate financial hack isn't just about getting the math right on your automatic transfers. It is about deeply defining what the word enough means for you personally. Not your neighbor's definition of enough, not an influencer's definition, yours.
Exactly.
Maybe enough just means paying your utility bills without getting a knot of anxiety in your stomach. Maybe it is knowing you can take your family on a vacation once a year without putting the flights on a credit card.
When you clearly define your personal baseline for enough, that 20 to 35% guilt-free spending bucket we architected earlier takes on a whole new meaning. It can actually bring you profound joy because you are spending it on things that align with your true values, completely free from the pressure of an endless, unclosable happiness gap.
I love that. So let's recap this journey. We started by completely debunking the myth of financial discipline. We explored the biology of the tote loop to understand why your willpower battery inevitably runs out. We saw how the frictionless automatic economy is specifically designed to exploit the pain of paying. Then we flipped the script. We learned how to harness our brain's natural tendency for mental accounting using Ramit Sethi's 4 buckets. We put the whole thing on an automated finance assembly line so it runs without human intervention. And finally, we grounded it all by defining what enough actually is so we don't end up wealthy but miserable.
It's a complete paradigm shift away from the exhaustion of traditional budgeting.
It really is. So we have a challenge for you, the listener. We want you to take one single actionable step this week. Go review your bank statement and locate just one forgotten subscription. Maybe it's a streaming service you haven't watched in months or some digital app you forgot you signed up for. Cancel it.
Just one.
And then set up an automatic transfer for that exact dollar amount or even just $50 to hit your savings account the day after your payday. Do not attempt to budget the rest of your money. Just spend it. Let the architecture do the heavy lifting for that small amount and watch what happens.
That one small automated step is really the beginning of a completely new relationship with your money.
And speaking of shaking up standard financial advice, you will not want to miss our next deep dive. We are taking on the sacred cow of the personal finance world. Next time, we are presenting the case against index funds.
Oh boy.
Yes, really. It is the argument that absolutely no one in the financial independence, retire early community wants to hear.
It is going to ruffle a lot of feathers.
I can't wait. But before we go, I want to leave you pondering one last concept from Richard Thaler. It is a behavioral trap called myopic loss aversion.
A very dangerous trap for investors.
Studies consistently show that people who check their investment portfolios too frequently become overly risk-averse. The human brain feels the biological pain of short-term, day-to-day market losses much more acutely than it feels the joy of equivalent gains.
Which means staring at your money every day, obsessing over the fluctuations, actually makes you a significantly worse investor.
So here's the thought I want you to walk away with today. The true secret of an automated financial system isn't just that it runs efficiently without your input. It's that it actually performs at its absolute best when you actively ignore it.